a lot of people are like, well, don't go to a place that has bad seed oils and only grass fed and this and that and everything else. Well, if we only did that, we would never go out to eat with any friends. I mean, it's just the way it is here. Right. And so like you're talking to the point where if our kids go out, like my daughter will go out, she'll order a hamburger with no bun. It's not going to be grass fed because we don't have it here. And she'll get a potato and broccoli. Like that is going to be the cleanest that you can eat, but that's still good as opposed to, ordering cheese balls and a fried chicken sandwich or whatever it might be.
Amen. Absolutely. Yeah. And 100%. And just, I'm a faith-driven person. So grace is one of the biggest things that we talk about, right?
Yes.
So give ourselves grace and give, like that's, you cannot be 100%. Again, like if there's serious autoimmunity going on and things like that, then maybe we do for a period of time have to be 100%. There's no questions asked. But to your point, these athletes, they need fuel. And if they're on a travel team, you're going to be out and about and you're going to have to eat on the go. So like giving them some different options. Yeah, if there's a Jimmy John's around or something like that, okay, well then we can live with some processed meats for right now, as long as we're not making a habit of that or, doing some things like that it's not going to be detrimental if you do it every once in a while.
Welcome to Take Back My Brain with Laurie Hammer, where real healing starts in the brain. I'm Laurie, a functional nutritionist and mom who's walked the path from anxiety and burnout to clarity and calm. Each week, we're going to dive into brain-based tools like amino acid therapy, gut health, fasting, and faith to help you reclaim your energy, emotions, and sense of self. Well, hello. Welcome back. I'm so excited you're here with me today. We are going to dive into middle school and high school athletics. And I'm like, we haven't talked about that in a long time. We talked about brain injuries, those kind of things, but we're going to dive in with Dr. Taylor today about athletes and the misconceptions and myths and the things we need to be doing different with our kids. So I have today with me Dr. Taylor Premer. He's a chiropractor, functional medicine doc, and he is committed to helping those high performers, athletes, and purpose-driven individuals. And he's located in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I just found out he knows some of the same people that I know. So I love how small the world is. So Dr. Taylor, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a treat. We were talking beforehand that ironically, I've listened to some of your podcasts before I even knew who you were. And so it's a small world all the way around. So congratulations. You've been doing this for a while, I know, and a lot of episodes. And I commend you. I had a podcast for 5 years and I know how much goes into it. And so the fact that you're still rolling and doing amazing is pretty awesome. So
it's one of my favorite things to do. I love podcasting. So thank you for being on today and honoring us with your presence and all of your wisdom. So let's talk about performance. So you are a high school athlete, right?
Yep. Yes,
and
definitely.
So you kind of learned all those things. Were you a college athlete too?
Nope, not college. Not good enough to be college, but just enough to be high school. So,
but
always loved it. Still very passionate about it. And honestly, a lot of the reason that, I'm so passionate about it is because I was one of those kids that looking back and, if you take the camera at the crime scene, I feel like I was, my potential was there, but I didn't have the right pieces to really put it all together. And some of that was, some underlying functional medicine issues, which maybe we can get into in a bit. And, but then also just, I grew up in a little itty bitty tiny town in the middle of Nebraska. We had 800 people and I always joke, we had no one calling on us. So the closest,
why would they?
Chiropractor PT was a half hour away. And even then it was, they did as good as they could have, but I feel like it was they were missing some big pieces that could have really helped me and also my other people. And so that's really been my passion over the last 10 years is trying to really revolutionize what it means to treat not only our high level athletes, but those athletes that, they don't want to play in college or the NFL and stuff like that, but they still want to enjoy their time in high school. And injuries are one of the main reasons why they don't get to have a good experience, which I think is a shame. So.
It is a shame. So what are the most common injuries that you're seeing amongst kids today?
Yeah, it's I kind of put it in two categories. If you just want to go straight MSK, musculoskeletal, I mean, the acute ankle sprain is the number one reason why someone would miss a practice, a game, anything like that. And if you look at the stats, I mean, that's the number one orthopedic reason why someone shows up to urgent care to ER and stuff like that is an acute ankle sprain. And the majority of the time, there's no fractures or nothing like that. However, we treat it like a fracture. So we use the RICE protocol, right? We rest it, we ice it, we compress it, and we elevate it. We put boots We put crutches, and then, you may follow up with orthopedic surgeon the next day or a week later. They say you're in the boot for 6 weeks, and then the boot comes off, and then, okay, you're free to go back. And now, if you dive into the research, the muscle atrophy that happens within that 6 week period is pretty significant. And so it's a crime, in my opinion, that we don't use some of this new research and these new concepts of treatment. And instead we throw our kids back out there without real good treatment. And then now they're more susceptible to having another ankle sprain. And that's a crime to me. And so that's the number one thing. But then, if I just look at a functional medicine standpoint, if we look back on that, I know what the reason that I saw your podcast first was Dr. Christy Sutton talking about celiac disease. And I'm a
Right.
lucky person to have celiac disease and hemochromatosis. And so the more I test for celiac disease in young athletes, the more I find it.
Yeah.
It's the misconceptions around that, which you talked about with Dr. Sutton of the genetic testing is where it's at. We don't need to biopsy the gut and things like that to get to that answer. Instead, we just need to do a simple blood test, and we can usually figure it out for relatively inexpensive. But that, to me, is the biggest thing I find. We're seeing more and more that kids are having loose connective tissue, either down lows even, or whatever that spectrum is, and that's
That's like
contributing.
epidemically
It is.
diagnosed right now. Yeah.
And I will tell you, I think that there is a direct connection between people with loose connective tissue and celiac disease.
I
Whether
do.
that
I
is,
agree.
yeah. And so that is a huge thing. And now, you're seeing ACL repairs in kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old. You're even seeing Tommy John surgeries, for example, in the elbow in the same
Mhm.
age groups. And so that, to me, is the big missing link to this, is meddling the two together. Is, yes, you have an acute athletic injury, but asking the reason why. Did you just have bad luck, which we can't avoid, or were there certain things that were predisposing you to be able to have those injuries? Especially if we look at females, like the rate of incidence of ACL tear in females versus males is drastically different. However, we don't study the females because female hormones are difficult to study, and that's hard to get sample populations. However, there's a big difference in that population. And, now there's this big movement that there's a couple hallmark studies that came out that basically you can predict when a female might tear her ACL depending on where she's at in her cycle. And so now you're having people that are saying, well, maybe we should just put all of our female athletes on birth control. Therefore, it reduces their chances
I
of
know. I
ACL
know.
rupture, which is just blasphemy. It's just ridiculous. But that is the next phase of sports medicine in my mind. And so I'm hoping that I can continue to push the narrative that that's not the answer. Like, that is, yes, that's the problem, but the answer is not through birth control and things like that.
Right. And I mean, I suppose there's lots of reasons, but can you pinpoint several key reasons? So I'm 52.
Mhm.
I was in high school, late 80s, early 90s, and we rarely had, I mean, let's sprain ankles. Okay. But we rarely had ACL repairs, even like traumatic brain injuries. Now you can say we didn't diagnose them as well, but I just don't remember those things being the issues that they are now. And nobody had like elbow surgery, for goodness sakes. Like, it just didn't happen. Reasons?
Yeah, a couple of them. I think if we just talk about the elbow, there was a hallmark study that came out that they looked at unaccounted pitches for athletes, and they looked at college athletes. They followed a college baseball team. It was like a Division III baseball team. And what they did is they just had someone that followed around the pitchers and basically put a tick mark every time they threw a ball. And what they found is during a practice, during a game, stuff like that, there was 40% of unaccounted throws for that pitcher. So we've been kind of taught this lie that 100 pitches is like people's kind of threshold. Well, then we've used that 100 pitches for our Major League Baseball, and now we put it into the college game and then the high school, and
Mhm.
now we're using that same thing for youth athletes.
Which is
So if we
ridiculous.
just let's look at travel ball. I'm sure it's big in Iowa. It's big everywhere now. So if you take let's just say your 12-year-old boy who's playing travel ball, so they may practice 2 or 3 times a week, which isn't a big deal. However, usually they're playing basketball and other things along with that. So we can talk about load maybe in a minute, but let's just talk about throws in general. So, during the week, their load management isn't that much, but then they get to the weekend tournament and they may play 6 or 7 games. Well, they may only pitch 2 games, and they may say, well, we're holding them to 50 pitches a game. That's great. But if you're a pitcher, that means you have a decent arm. So what happens is when you get pulled from pitching, then you go play the outfield. Well, and then you're throwing the ball to home plate between innings if a ball gets hit to you. And now you do that 5 or 6 times in a weekend, and then you do that 7 or 8 weekends in a row. Now it's just a load management issue. We haven't allowed the body to adapt to this much demand, and therefore something's going to break down. So there was a couple technique changes, in the last 10, 15 years that took the stress off of the shoulder and now are on the elbow. And so a really common flaw biomechanically we see is that we were taught, and I was taught the same thing. It was kind of my generation, that out of the glove, and this is nuance, but it's something to look for. Out of the glove, if you're in pitcher's prayer, so the ball's here, you're looking at home plate, that the first move you do is actually move your arms down. So this is a biomechanical flaw, and it will cause a timing issue down the road. Versus if you look at Nolan Ryan or some of these best pitchers that have longevity, they'll take the ball out. So it's a nuance, but it's a very, it's a good biomechanical kind of trademark or hallmark to see that. And so that's kind of the elbow. And then if we look at ACL tears, I think the demand is big. Playing on turf is big. Like that is, you're seeing more and more colleges and NFL teams move away from turf and go back to grass. Now, from a functional medicine perspective, you and I can try riff on how we're managing that grass, and maybe that's causing some other issues.
Exactly. Yeah. Which one is less toxic? I don't know.
Yeah, but you can also say the same thing about turf. They're using artificial grass. They're using, rubber that has that's coming from petroleum and blah, 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 blah. However, grass is just more forgiving. That's just plain and simple. So your foot's not getting stuck in the turf and things like that. And so those are really the two big things. I think load management when it comes to little leaguer's elbow or UCL tears and things like that. And then also the turf considerations as well as the nutritional status of ACL tears. I don't have a lot of evidence to back that up. However, that's just what I've seen pattern wise. Again, when you get an athlete that you have to give them that news that they tore their ACL, you'd be remiss not to go back and just think about, okay, what could I have done more, or what did we miss maybe in the training, or what could we have done better? Because if you don't ask those questions, then you're missing a giant opportunity for that athlete after they do have the surgery. Then what do we do to actually make it so they don't have it again? And that's the question that a lot of us forget to ask, whether that we're talking about functional medicine or musculoskeletal injuries and stuff like that, is to ask that core concept. We talk about getting to root cause all the time, but rarely do we actually get to root cause, because it's hard to ask those questions, and it's hard to kind of dissect the things that you may have missed.
Oh my goodness, yes. Well, and I think how undernourished our kids are, and I work with a lot of young ladies, and most of them, well, they either don't have their period or it's so sporadic. They're 16, 17, 18 years old. They don't have a regular period.
So true.
They barely eat anything, and they're going from, 6 a.m. till 10 or 11 p.m. at night. And we push our kids beyond their limits. It's good to be like, hey, go for it and be involved in, this and that and everything. I remember being involved in so many things in high school, but it feels so different now. The fact that, they're on a travel team, they're on their high school team, they're on weekend tournaments, they're on like, and how did we get here? And what do you feel like? Is there an answer? Can we scale this back so that we save our bodies, so that when we're 40, 50, even 30, I look at my nephews and they're like, feel 50,
you're trashed, right?
Yeah, you're trashed already.
I think you asked a really important question: is how did we get here? Because even my generation, I'm 33. Like I was the same way. I grew up in Nebraska. If you played baseball, you had Legion ball. That was as high as you went.
That was it.
Now we have every single travel ball that you could ever imagine. And really what it comes down to, it's a business. Like they estimate youth sports is now a multi-billion-dollar business. It is the fastest growing industry in the United States. And so that right there is the answer, unfortunately. And so can you do anything about it? Unfortunately, the train is on the tracks. Like if your kid has aspirations to, go play Division I baseball or Division I soccer or something like that, unfortunately, the days of getting recruited out of high school are just kind of gone. Now you have to go to the camps. You have to go to these different things in order to get eyes on you. And so now you're seeing a huge movement of parents pulling their kids out of the high school sports and only doing travel ball, which is such a shame, because you have such an opportunity to grow as a human being if you're, around your friends and stuff like that. But to answer your question, to me, the train is on the tracks. Now we got to do things that are support our kids. And honestly, it brings up a good question of, should we be specializing? And Like, should we be specialized? Should we play multi-sports? And, it's a big thing right now of, oh no, you have to play multiple sports. And they'll pull a bunch of NFL players and say, well, Christian McCaffrey was, the captain of his basketball team, and he played baseball and did all these things. However, we're using the 1% and standardizing it to the 99%. So I think right now you can make a pretty good argument that specialization is honestly probably safer. Because yes, and I hate to say that, it burns me at my core because I want the kids to play all these sports and have these opportunities.
Just go have fun. I feel like they're not having as much fun as they could have anymore.
Exactly. However, again, if they have aspirations, and maybe you're in a socioeconomical status where the only chance of your child going to college is to play a sport, then by all means, then we should have conversations about maybe specialization is right. And, what time period that is. It's a good question. Like, I really don't have a good answer. My gut tells me probably somewhere around freshman, sophomore year of high school. We should really consider it. The thing I always bring up to my athletes, if, for example, they're a baseball pitcher and they want to wrestle, for example, they want to play football. Well, you're one shot from a dislocation or a sublux of your shoulder or something like that, which then if you have to have surgery to revise that, now you've lost your ability to throw a baseball. You can still do it, but you're not going to be near as effective because once you disrupt the capsule of a shoulder, a hip, a knee, it's just never going to be the same. As much as I can say I've rehabbed them really good, it's just never going to be the same. And so, to those points, I think it's up for debate. And again, it pains me to say that, but that's just the reality in the world that we live in right now.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about nutrition with those middle school, high school athletes. I know, some really, Division III college athletes, and they have their nutritionist, and they've got, the red light therapy, they've got the hyperbaric, they've got all these recovery tools. We don't have those in middle school and high school.
Definitely.
So let's talk about it. What should our kids be eating? And should all of them be getting tested for like celiac and doing some basic blood work and those kind of things so that the parents know? And then second part to this is, how do you get them to be compliant in that?
Yeah, no, these are the hard hitters. These are the things that keep me up at night, to be honest with you. And
right, me too. I'm like, what?
I know. And short answer, I mean, yes. If I have an athlete that comes through that's showing signs of, for example, loose connective tissue or laxity, or maybe they're just not developing as quick as the parents think they should, or maybe they have as quick as their brothers or sisters did, or something like that. That's always should be like a trigger in your mind. Like, something's probably not perfect here. So that would be the automatically. Let's do some basic labs. Let's check them for celiac disease. Or do they have eczema? Do they have psoriasis? Like, are they having some skin conditions that lead us back to the gut that may lead us down a food issue or food allergy, or celiac disease and stuff like that. So that would be number one. Number two, like, early on, like, I'm not a parent yet. I'm hoping to be soon, but I'm not a parent, so it's easy for me to say this. But early on, you've got to teach your kids that food is medicine, and like food is nurturing, and it is fuel. And that means maybe not going through the drive-through. Like, that's just, it is what it is. However, I just think, like, if I can just get kids and parents to really focus on what good protein sounds like and looks like, I think that's the easiest way to start. Like, that is the easiest way to start. If your kid loves steak, by all means, cook them steak and make them steak. I know it's expensive.
3 times a day, people. 3 times a day.
Yeah, and I know it's expensive, and I know those types of things. However, that is like the biggest thing I would say to them, and get them a good protein powder like that alone. So I really love a Quip. It's made from 100% grass-fed beef isolates, and it doesn't have all the junk in it, whey and things like that. But honestly, I just educate them on, the 3 most common food allergies that you're going to see is wheat. It's going to be soy and casein, which is in dairy. And so it's a pretty good idea. Maybe we don't just pump them full of milk because that's what you had all day long. And so, doing a simple like elimination diet or something like that would be a good way. And then, people ask me all the time, like, when's too early to start supplementing? And I don't have a good answer for it, to be honest with you. But if your kid's showing signs of, that laxing, stuff like that, then yeah, maybe some creatine, maybe some collagen, some good vitamin C, some vitamin D, like checking those types of things and implementing that can go a really long ways to making sure that they're getting their micronutrients in from that. And it's funny that, the new food pyramid came out. And my background is nutrition. I have a nutrition degree from Nebraska, and that's all it was based on was the old food pyramid. And That's the reason I went to chiropractic school, because I was so disgusted in my education and what we were teaching and what we were trying to implement. And so I think that it's a step in the right direction to actually make people understand that red meat is not the issue. Protein is not
No.
the issue. It's the grains, it's the heavy processed things that we're being exposed to that's causing these things. And so that's where I would start. Really, really high quality proteins, electrolytes, and then get rid of the junk. I mean, I think that it can literally be as simple as that. And if it's still not responding, just like we would in functional medicine approach, then we would just continue to move further and further down the list.
Hey, friend, just a quick break to remind you if calming your brain is the missing piece in your practice or in your home, my Mind Thrive certification course teaches you exactly how to do that with targeted amino acid therapy. So it's real science, real results, no band aids. Enrollment is now open. Link is in the show notes. So back to the show. Yeah, absolutely. I love organ meats. Like, so if you
Yeah.
can, I mean, add in those because those are going to strengthen your bones. They're going to strengthen all your connective tissue, better than, anything else can do. So
Well,
get
and
those.
there's this giant myth about calcium, and we've been taught
Oh
such a
my
big
gosh.
lie
Yes.
about
Let's talk about
calcium
that.
that yeah, so that's what we did. Like after practice and stuff, my parents got me a chocolate milk because everybody said that that's the best
Right.
thing to recover because you need calcium to strengthen your bones. Well, I'm here to tell you, like, you have to have other substrates in your bloodstream in order for that calcium to be absorbed correctly. Otherwise, it's going to get deposited in random places, your arteries, your fingertips, your joints. And so, that's where vitamin D and minerals and like all these other things really come into play because if you don't have those substrates, you cannot absorb the calcium. And by the way, there's more calcium in a head of broccoli than there is in a gallon of milk. So, like, and you're getting it from organ meats and things like that. So, like, again, I'm not trying to be anti-dairy. It's just I see so many kids these days have an issue with dairy products, and why that is, I don't have a good answer. Like the dairy that we're eating nowadays is probably just different than it was 15 years ago.
Oh my goodness. It is so different. I mean, it's homogenized, pasteurized. There's so many more
Mhm.
hormones and antibiotics and stuff that these cows are, inundated with and stuff. And so no, it's not grandpa's cow. It's not your raw milk that,
No, for
that
sure.
some of us grew up on by any means at all. And and our food system is just it's just depleted. So that and
It
then
is.
you are a product of what you're eating. So if you're eating depleted food, if you're eating toxic food, you're going to be depleted and toxic as well. And it's so true with our kids. And I am a parent, so I can go back and say this. Like I raised my kids on not eating garbage, right? So we just don't eat crap here. And um
Yeah. Good for you.
even even as my kids have grown older, they would go out with their friends and they might sit in McDonald's, but there was no way that either of them were ever going to touch a McDonald's hamburger, French fries, nothing like that. And just because they both knew they have so much knowledge, right? You're held accountable when you have knowledge. And they're like, I just can't. And like, my mom will kill me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and your kids are looking up to you too. So the
They
choice is
are.
that
So what is
yeah.
your, how are you modeling that for them? And the best results I have with kids are the parents are like, I'm not going to eat that then either. If they can't
Yep.
eat it, I'm not eating it. And we're going to make this
Amen.
switch as a family.
Yep. Amen. And
Yeah.
two, like I always think about it, just from a genetic standpoint. People, how many times a day do you hear it? Well, just runs in my family. My mom had this, and now my kids are going to have that. Well, what the genetics? Yes, they do play a huge role. However, your choices are not genetic; they're habits. You
Yes.
model your habits after your parents. Your parents model them after their parents, and so on and so forth. And you can pass on good things too.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things that my parents never worked out. They never worked out in their life, never touched a weight. They were literally allergic to it. And so when I
Right.
moved back home, I do some weight training here as well to help people to strengthen their bones, to help them gain muscle for longevity and things like that. And so now they're working out once a week. They're coming in here every single week. And so all the time, I wish that my parents understood some of that stuff and just like went to the gym because that's a habit that I still have to flex. And it's not always easy for me to do those things, even though I know how important it is. But that's just, 30 years of doing what I was just kind of taught how to do. And so the same things are for your kids right now, no matter how old they are. You're the example.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. And I've always teach my mamas like, because I work a lot with moms, as
Hmm.
to just don't make a big deal out of it. Like if you're gonna switch stuff in your home, just switch it. Like if you're gonna start buying grass-fed meat, just don't announce it.
Yeah.
Just Just
Yeah.
do it. Or you're like, hey, we're going to eat less gluten. Don't announce it. Just buy the different noodles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kids will eat it. They're hungry. There was a point in time, my son got really picky for whatever reason. And he just like, I don't like any of this. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I would just cook anyway. And I just wouldn't set him a place at the table. And then eventually he's like, I do want that. I'm like, well, you can fix your own plate.
Yeah.
Like you just
Yeah.
don't make a big deal out of it. And so,
And
and
empower them, I'm sure,
you
right? You
just
just
empower them.
empower
Yeah.
them.
They're making
Yeah.
their choice. Yeah. Making their own choice. Yeah. And my daughter, her friends will make fun of her. A few of them, they'll be like, did you bring your granola and your filtered water today? And she's like, no, I brought beef sticks.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. I love it. I
Brought
love
beef
it.
sticks. Yeah. I mean, she's definitely, like a carnivore driven kind of girl. Yeah, I
Love
know.
it.
Speaking of that, like special diets, like there's so many out there. And so what do we do with our kids? Like, should they follow a paleo? Should they follow a keto? Should they do a lot of diet variation? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's hard to say because it's so individualized, and I think to your point of not making a big deal of it, I think just if you just eat clean 90%, 80, 90% of the time, you're gonna be good. What does eating clean look like? Not having processed foods around, processed oils and things like that.
Yeah.
So not having processed foods and processed oils and things like that around, like that's where I would start. Get rid of the packaged foods, get rid of the canned goods, things like that, and just start there. So then as far as being on a specific diet, the only time I put people on a specific diet, well, especially when we're talking about our athletes, is when they have, let's say they have celiac disease, or they have some sort of food allergy that I'm suspecting, or they do have a concussion or something like that. That's where I'll get strict on things. Otherwise, I find the more stricture you put on the kids, the harder it is for, number one, the parents to adhere, and
Yeah.
for them to not push back. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's so independent and it's so different every single person that I hate to even generalize it. But yeah, I mean, would everybody be better off if they were eating a paleo diet? Probably. Like
Yeah.
probably. I don't think we would
Yeah.
argue with that, or just an anti-inflammatory diet in general, meaning higher levels of protein, lower carb, more fruits and vegetables. Like that's a pretty good way to think about it.
Yeah. Well, I know around here, because we live in small town Iowa, you grew up in small town Nebraska, and our restaurant selection is not amazing, right?
Hmm.
So we
Yep.
don't have a ton of good places to eat in a town of 5,000, and every little town around us is like 200. So you
Sure.
got, your little bars and, all those kind of little cafes and stuff. And so a lot of people are like, well, don't go to a place that has bad seed oils and only grass fed and this and that and everything else. Well, if we only did that, we would never go out to eat with any friends. I mean, it's just the way it is here. Right. And so, like, you're talking to the point where if our kids go out, like my daughter will go out, she'll order a hamburger with no bun. It's not going to be grass fed because we don't have it here. And she'll get a potato and broccoli. Like, that is going to be the cleanest that you can eat, but that's still good as opposed to, ordering cheese balls and a fried chicken sandwich or whatever it might be.
Amen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And 100%. And just, I'm a faith driven person. So grace is one of the biggest things that we talk about,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
So give ourselves grace and give, like you cannot be 100%. Again, like if there's serious autoimmunity going on and things like that, then maybe we do for a period of time have to be 100%. There's no questions asked. But to your point, these athletes, they need fuel. And if they're on a travel team, you're going to be out and about and you're going to have to eat on the go. So like giving them some different options. Yeah, if there's a Jimmy John's around or something like that, okay, well then we can live with some processed meats for right now, as long as we're not making a habit of that, or doing some things like that it's not going to be detrimental if you do it every once in a while. But it's the repetitiveness and over and over and over again that really gets people in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into our final thing on here, concussions. Like,
Yeah,
this
nice.
feels like there are so many concussions and like repeated concussions. Like
Yep.
my assistant, her daughter is an athlete and she gets keep getting schmucked in the head and she's
Yep.
not passing concussion protocols, and then she recovers, she feels really good, and then she gets schmucked in the head again, she got another concussion. Like, I just don't feel like that happened before. So again, what's going on, and is it a depletion issue? Is it a repetitiveness issue? Is it I don't know, what is it?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. You know, like the more contact you have in contact sports, the more likely you are to have a concussion. However, you know, the mechanism has really changed, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years. And that, you know, it used to be that we just imagined that it was like an egg yolk inside of an egg, right? So the egg yolk gets slammed against it, you get a bruise, and then it'll just kind of heal. Well, now it's what they call axonal shear, which is a big word that basically just means the axons that are basically transmitting electrical impulses that give your brain stimulation, your thoughts, your movement, stuff like that, they get sheared apart quickly. And it causes, just like if you strain a muscle, that it causes bleeding here. So after that axon has been overstretched, well, now you get bleeding in this area. And we probably understand what the blood-brain barrier is. The blood-brain barrier is what basically prevents your brain from sucking up toxins and other things like that. But it also makes it difficult to get rid of things.
Hmm.
So that's why I think we discount the healing time and what it takes to really get rid of that bleeding and bruising in the actual brain itself. And part of that is nutritional status. Part of that is sleep. Part of that is genetics. Part of that is a lot of different things. However, for me, like the first thing I do if I have a kid that gets a concussion or even just a brain hit or something like that, like we just start them on a really, really kind of strict supplement regimen that includes creatine, magnesium, omegas, vitamin D, vitamin C, some sort of B complex. Like those kind of are my ground, like my starting point as far as supplements to give the body the substrate necessary to get rid of that bleeding and those inflammatory markers in the brain to then eventually heal that area, and then it's good as new. But what happens is we don't get all those inflammatory markers out of the brain. Then we have a second or a third or whatever that might be, a quick another injury, and now you restart that process all over again.
Right.
So if I have kids and they're playing contact sports, those would be the supplements that I would probably just keep them on as a preventative nature. Therefore, they have, you know, they
Right.
get, and some people will say, you're insane, like that, you're just making expensive urine for your kids. Well, maybe. However, if the body has those substrates ready to go when something like that happens, that should theoretically decrease the healing time and should kind of help with that. But yeah, I mean, all of those things matter. Blue light, you know, excessive blue
Mm.
light,
Yep.
not getting deep sleep because they're staring at their phone or watching TV before they go to bed. Like all of those things matter. But again, like for your parents that are listening, that seems like a lot of overwhelming considering all the things we already talked about for them to keep track of.
Right.
A pretty good rule of thumb: don't let your kids look at their phone or the TV an hour before bed. Like
Hmm.
again, we talk about habits. I wish I had the habit of reading before bed my entire life. You know, like what a good habit to have. You know, whatever that looks like. You can read fun things. You can read the Bible. Whatever your family is into, but get them away from screens and blue light as long as possible to allow their body to get into a deeper sleep. Because you kind of have two different ways of sleeping, right? You have deep sleep and you have REM sleep, and those two different processes are happening during those times. And so if you're not allowing your body to get into REM, which is rapid eye movement, or deep sleep, you're not allowing your brain's lymphatic system to work properly. Therefore, it can't really reset and heal and drain and do those types of things. And so those are big words, but just know the deeper sleep your kids get and the better sleep they get, the better. It doesn't have to be 10, 12, 14 hours. Like it just needs to be good, efficient sleep. And then, you know, you're allowing your body to process just like adults or anybody else.
Right. Well, I think you just hit on another key thing, sleep. Like our
Hmm.
kids need more sleep than they generally get. So, I
For
mean
sure.
that's huge for recovery. They're running on empty half the time and they're getting, 6, 7 hours of sleep and
Definitely.
they're
Definitely.
exhausted during school. And so they don't have the repair time. They don't have that deep sleep that you're talking about for,
Right.
all that
And
detox.
I'm not saying that you need to like put an aura ring on your 12-year-old or something
Right.
like
Right.
that, but just I just a thing that I do with my athletes' parents a lot. Let's say they do have elbow pain and they're a pitcher. I just on my whiteboard, I just start writing. Okay, so today's Tuesday. Let's go back a week ago. Starting Tuesday, what'd they throw? Okay, so then they had practice, so they probably threw 30 times. Perfect, 30. All right, Wednesday. Oh, we played catch in the backyard. Well, 30 times. All right, there's 30. And then I just start tracking. Okay. So then by the next time in a week, they're like, oh my gosh, like he's actually throwing the ball a lot. Same thing can happen with their sleep. Okay. So you had a late practice, you ate late, you got to bed late, and they had to be up early for practice. All right. So they got 7 hours. All right. Boom, 7 hours. Okay. The next night, oh, we got a full night's sleep. So they got 8. Perfect. You're still an hour in sleep debt if we're, being
Mhm.
serious. And then just start tracking things that way. And then, it doesn't take rocket science to see, oh man, all right, this weekend we should probably take it easy a little bit because I know that Johnny is a little bit lacking in sleep. maybe we should, make some good home cooked meals, stay home, get to bed early, things like that. So like just break it down very simple. It doesn't have to be extravagant. You don't have to, go to these crazy places where they're tracking everything and do that crazy stuff. If there's a problem, by all means, find someone that, like yourself or like me that can kind of dive in deeper. However, just take it from a very 30,000-foot view and just use common sense when it comes to your kid. And for the most part, you're a mother. You usually know what your kid needs, whether they believe it or not. And so, move into that. Like that, absolutely. Just that's one of the biggest things that I'll say is like, let's just take a step back. Don't view Johnny as the baseball player. Let's view Johnny as the kid. All right. What do you think the kid needs? Like, what do you think is going on? Not what the doctors told you or anything like that. Like, what do you feel like is going on? And majority of the time, the parent is going to know, or sometimes even the kid will have a better idea. So for the most part, though, we just don't, we kind of discount that subjectiveness of patient encounters. And instead we go all into the objective and we test and we test and we test and we test. And the next thing you know, you're confused, the patient's confused, and the rest
They're
is
overwhelmed, they're not
yes,
compliant, and yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
what are the foundations? Like if we remove those foundational interferences, we give the body what it needs. God designed our bodies to heal and to
amen.
function really, really well.
Amen. Yeah, and I kind of have. You said the foundations. My foundations. I have five of them: sleep, movement, nutrition, supplementation, stress, and mindset. So like those are five ways that, and it sounds ridiculous, but that's where I start with all my patients. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
if they've been everywhere, they have the craziest case. I had a wild case today that I saw. Those are the first five things I'm going to ask you. It doesn't matter all the testing you've had. I'm going to ask you, what are your symptoms? What do you think is going to cause it? Okay, now let's check in. How's your sleep? How's your movement? How's your nutrition? How's your stress? How's your mindset? Like those are the five keys to me. And if we just start there, then usually we can uncover what I would call the root causes, because sometimes we want to make things so complex. And in reality, the beautifulness of life is in the simplicity of it, right? The
Right?
least amount
Yes.
necessary. So, and I think that hopefully parents that are listening to this will take that and realize, oh yeah, maybe I don't have to buy the best red light device on the market, or I don't have to use, those crazy expensive compression boots. I don't have to get my kid an glutathione IV every time they play, or things like that. Like, and I say those things because those are legit questions I get. But sometimes you just have to go back to the basics, and that to me, if everybody on planet Earth just took care of those basics, I
My
would
goodness.
probably be out of a job.
I hear you. I hear you. So, maybe not a good business model. I mean, do we want people doing those? No, no, we really, really do, right? We want
We
people
do.
doing those. I would love to be out of a job because people are so healthy. So
Amen.
I would always love to I wish I could just lay hands on everybody. They would heal whatever disease they have, and then I could teach them how to stay that way, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big part of my practice. You mentioned laying hands, and that is a very biblical, and it doesn't matter what culture you're talking about. If you're talking about the Chinese or Indians, like across the entire planet, laying of hands has been one of the most important things in healing. And so I think that is another thing that is kind of lost, is so many times people think I'm adjusting, I'm doing crazy soft tissue and stuff like that. But a lot of times we're just like calming things down, meaning
Things down.
I may just like do a little bit of soft tissue work, and in reality, I'm just calming everything down. And I think that that's a lost art. And whether we're talking chiropractic, manual therapy, PT, anything like that, the laying of hands, and that's something that you as a parent can do as well. Like sometimes you just have to touch your kid where it hurts, and
Yeah.
that can go a really long way. So don't discount your ability to help someone else heal, even if you don't have the credentials behind your name and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it regulates your nervous system.
Amen.
I mean, kids they need to be touched. They need to be snuggled and loved, even if they're big boys and,
Absolutely.
they're like, don't touch me, mom. They
Yep.
really, really want a mama hug. I remember my
Absolutely.
daughter, the first concussion she got, she was young. And if she felt, dysregulated, if she felt nervous, anxious, or any of those things, she would just come find me wherever I was in the house. And she would hold on to me and I would hold on to her. And I would do that until she felt better. And then she's like, I'm
Beautiful.
okay now. Thank you. And just move on. Right. And it
Beautiful.
wasn't hyperbaric. It wasn't a red light. It wasn't anything. It was just that physical touch. And we forget how powerful that is.
Absolutely. I mean, Yeah, you said it perfectly well. And, it doesn't discount those other things. If your kid's having an issue with multiple concussions and healing and stuff,
Exactly.
hyperbaric oxygen can be a great piece of the puzzle. But
Hmm.
if that's where you're hanging your hat on and you're skipping the other things that we've talked about, maybe you got better uses of your time and money.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness. Taylor, thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation. Do
Beautiful.
you have anything else that you want to leave, everyone listening with?
I think if I could give you one clinical pearl, and this is to all the parents, a lot of times you don't know where to start. Let's just take the ankle sprain, a bump, a bruise, things like that. The first thing that your mind's going to go to is that RICE protocol, the rest, the ice, compression, elevation. I will challenge you and instead use movement, use heat, and use weight bearing. Okay. Those three are going to give you such a big clue of whether or not you do need to take them to urgent care or to the ER to get imaging. Because if your child can weight bear within that first 24 hours of an injury, it's a pretty good indicator that they don't have anything seriously wrong, no fractures, ligament damage, and stuff like that. It's a pretty good rule of thumb. It's not 100%, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb. Is not Heat is what gives your body the chance to heal. We've fought against inflammation and swelling for the last 100 years. And I'm here to tell you that the swelling is actually there to help bring your body's beautiful healing substrates to that area. So heat increases circulation, it helps to reduce inflammation long term, and it helps to increase the healing aspect. So ice shuts down the metabolism, it shrinks it down, it prevents you from getting those substrates to heal, and it prevents it will prolong your injury time. And then the last thing is movement. Sometimes, as crazy as it sounds, you just need to walk something off. So don't be afraid to add some movement. I'm not saying that when Johnny hurts his leg or his ankle to put him back there on the field. I'm just saying let's hold off a little bit on putting him in a boot and an X-ray, or I'm sorry, and crutches and things like that. Instead, let's use movement, let's use weight bearing, and let's use heat. It's research backed. I've tried and tested it over the last 10 years, and I'm telling you that it is like a chef's kiss how good it works. And so all those things are my challenge to status quo, and my challenge to orthopedic medicine is I could just burn all the boots on planet Earth, I would do it in
Right?
a heartbeat. So, but anyway, again, there's a time and place for it, but you got to use it there.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, but I do all virtual consults as well, whether that's functional medicine or I consult on a lot of injuries. Doesn't matter what level of athlete you are. I see patients all over the country, which is the nice thing with my new setup. And so you can go to premerhealth.com, Premer. It's in the background here if you're watching. Premerhealth.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Premerhealth or at Dr. Taylor Premer. So that's where I live.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. This is such a great conversation. Thank you so much for blessing us with your time.
I appreciate you, Laurie. Keep crushing it.
Oh, definitely will. And I know all of you listening that you know somebody who needs this podcast. So send this to somebody because you know that they need it. So God bless each and every one of you. And I will see you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to Take Back My Brain. If today's episode helped you connect with hope or direction, I want you to follow the show, leave us a review, and share it with someone who needs it. And if you're ready to start your own healing journey, explore our courses and our coaching programs at lauriehammer.com/store. So until next time, remember, you cannot medicate away a nutrient deficiency, and healing your brain isn't just possible, it's powerful.